Welcome to the Bizlife podcast, the place where you and your business thrive. This podcast is dedicated to bring you the most interesting, inspiring people to help you and your business grow. Today on the podcast, we have Mike Dougherty, and we are talking about the 4 things that every entrepreneur needs to consider before they make the leap of faith into owning their own business. Welcome to the Bizlife podcast. I'm Donnie Bedore, your host, and we have in studio today Mike Dougherty. So, welcome, Mike. Glad you're on the show.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Dougherty. What is the origin of?
Yeah,
that?
it's Irish.
Okay.
It goes back to I think the 12th or 13th century.
Oh, wow.
And there was a feudal baron who was doing what feudal barons do, and he made one of his subjects really kind of testy.
Okay.
And so the guy decided one day, hey, enough of this guy, and he led a revolt. And then his name from that day forward was Dougherty.
Okay.
And apparently that means one who confronts. So
Okay.
I don't know what that means for me, except that my father told me when I was about 16, if there was ever anybody more aptly named than me, with the name one who confronts, he didn't know who they were. So
There you go. Love it. Well, welcome to the Bizlife.
thanks.
Yeah. So again, this show is dedicated to the small business owner, entrepreneur, someone that is wanting to just make their lane in the world. And appreciate you coming on the show. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about your transition from full-time job to business owner.
Yeah.
Right. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into this.
Ready to boost your business's impact? Fully Promoted Fort Worth is your one-stop destination for branding needs, specializing in branded apparel and promotional products. They help attract, retain, and engage customers. From custom uniforms to eye-catching items, Fully Promoted Fort Worth has you covered. Contact them today to unlock your brand's potential. 817-803-4404. Fully Promoted, your success, their passion.
Looking to elevate your office meetings, client gifting, or corporate parties? Check out Gray's Craze, your one-stop destination for delightful catering options. Imagine impressing your colleagues and clients with our large charcuterie board, carefully curated with the finest artisanal cheeses, premium meats, and an array of accompaniments. And when it comes to client gifting, nothing says thank you quite like a luxurious selection of gourmet treats designed to meet your every need. Gray's Craze, catering that leaves a lasting impression.
Like a lot of people, when I was 18, I went to college. I did what people said you ought to do.
Yep.
I got a degree in political science of all the crazy things.
Okay.
And
One who
minored
confronts.
in marketing. Yeah. Minored in marketing.
Okay.
And I took that to Walmart and got trained and did, some stuff in retail management. That was actually a great first job out of college. A lot of things that I learned about work ethic and that. But realized I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life, and really decided I wanted to be in business-to-business sales. And I was playing golf with a buddy one day, and he asked me what I'd like to do, and I told him, and he introduced me to a sales manager, and that started my sales career now over 30 years ago. Oh. And I had also always kind of wanted to own my own business. I'll tell you a little funny story about that in a minute. But
yeah, sure.
Sales was as close as I could get. Right? I mean, by being a sales guy, I could kind of have a fair degree of autonomy and kind of enjoy that, but not take the risk of being a business owner, right? Not assume that risk. And so I thought that would be a good fit for me, and it worked out well. I'd say, I had a sales career that was about 30 years. I'd consider myself a solid B+ sales rep.
Okay.
I ended up in the technology space and made my living there for most of those years. And for the last decade or so that I did that, I was with one company.
Okay.
And really enjoyed that. And it was a great company.
Yeah.
But, I woke up one morning and I was like, okay, there's enough money in the bank. There's, what do I want to do? You know, and it's kind of COVID, frankly, was kind of a trigger point for me, right? Yeah. I got to go home and work from home every day for a couple years.
Right.
And then COVID was over and they wanted us to come back to the office. And I was like, well, why? Kind of didn't hit me right. And then the other thing that happened pretty quickly after that was they were talking about changing the compensation plan. And as I was looking at what they were proposing, you know, they always try to sell it to you like, oh, this is going to be better. You're going to make more money. But really all I could see was that I was going to make less money to do the same. And I was going to have to do a lot more. It was like, you know, if I'm going to go exert all this effort, do I want to do this for me or for somebody else? Right. And it was kind of, and frankly, you know, we were talking about my age before we started.
Yeah.
I was kind of looking at the calendar and realizing there's enough gas in the tank still to do this.
Yeah.
But a few more years go by and there won't be.
Right, right.
And if you don't do it soon, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that kind of thing.
Yeah. And that was, well, and my, me transitioning from working for the man, I guess you would say, right, to business owner was the freedom that I wanted, right? And I think I heard you say that. Just having the autonomy to be able to do what you wanted, you know, whenever you want and create your lane and things like that. So, yeah, I know many people become or aspire to be a business owner for different reasons, right? So, that's really good.
Yeah, well, kind of a funny story on that, the autonomy.
Yeah.
When you did me the kindness of preparing me with some questions ahead of time.
I tried to.
I remembered, you know, like, when did you have this decision? And I wanted to say it was a cumulative. Like, when was the moment, right? There were cumulative moments.
Okay.
There were cumulative moments.
Okay.
And I kind of shared the trigger point, but it really started, when I think about it, when I was 4 years old.
Okay.
And I was riding with my mom in the car. And I said, hey, where are we going, Mom? And she said, to school. And I was like, school? I mean, I knew it was on the horizon, but nobody had prepared me. Nobody had said, this is the day, right? Yeah. And the next thing I know, I'm at school, and I really don't like it. Like, they're telling me what to do, and I kind of sit in this seat, and I can't, there's a whole bunch of blocks over there that should be played with, but we can't do that right now because we got to do. And so finally I decided, you know, I'm going to wet my pants. And I did that because I thought, if I wet my pants, they'll call my mom and she'll have to come get me.
Okay.
But they were ready for that. They had a pair of pants for me to change into. They were too big and they safety pinned them, so it kind of looked like a diaper that they put on me. You know, it was humiliating. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And from that day until the last day that I worked for somebody else, to some degree, I felt like my life was ordered by someone else.
Right.
You know, like somebody else got to decide what the priorities were and all of that.
Yeah.
I've had a realization since then. Well, I'll just say, so that was motivating me. I've actually had a realization since then.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
I was always the boss of me. I didn't have to go start my own company to be the boss of me.
Right.
I was always somebody who could make choices and decide what to do with my day. And part of the decision was to be employed by someone else and to take their compensation package, right?
Right.
But I could always undecide that.
Sure.
I was always free to do something different.
Yeah.
And so I was always free to decide how much effort to put out in school and what activities to participate in.
Right.
Whether, you know, so I guess the first lesson, and I kind of had to do this to realize that, hey, wait a minute, I've always been the boss of me. Right? So that's the first lesson I have for the aspiring entrepreneur.
Right.
You are the boss of you right now.
Yeah.
And don't, unless you're, you know, in the Army, then you really are bound by law to do what you're told. You're not, your life is not your own, or you're in prison or something like that.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're out here in the commercial space and you're making a living, you know, you're the boss of you now. So make the most of that. Right. And don't think that isn't true just because you're not self-employed.
Right. No,
I guess
it's great word for sure. And I like that. I like that. Because it's true, right? I mean,
Sure.
Being a small business owner isn't for everybody.
Right.
You know, if everybody quit their day job to go be a small business owner, then yeah. So I think the one working for someone, right, is good, and it was great for me. I mean, I did it for years.
Oh, yeah.
And learned so much. You know, and I would not take any of that back. Matter of fact, I called. I had a conversation with my old HR director. She's now the vice president of the company.
Okay.
And it was probably about a year ago. I called her and I said, "Hey, I just want to talk to you. Thank you so much for everything that you did for me throughout all these years."
Right.
I started with that company when I was 21 and stayed with that company until I became a small business owner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so pretty much all my adult life, you know, growing up, I was with that company and yeah, very transformative portion in my life and learned so much. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today without that. So
Yeah. Well, and I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
If I hadn't had all those years working for somebody else, I'd have never had the wherewithal to do what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
And, you know, I guess that leads us to some other things to talk about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So, okay.
How did I know? How much would it take?
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? Because,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, and I know my story, but this episode isn't about me. I wanted it to be about you. So what, maybe the preparation, so you make the decision, all right, I want to be a small business owner, right?
Right.
And so I guess let's give the audience, what do you do now, right?
Yeah.
What did you go to? And then how did you prepare for this?
Yeah, let's talk about what we do now. So
what do you do?
So I own 2 franchises,
Okay.
A kitchen tune-up and a bath tune-up. And those 2 businesses are really combined under one roof to do kitchen and bath remodels.
Yeah.
And even though they're 2 franchises, I really view them as the same entity.
Sure.
And I roll them up under a company that's a C Corp.
Yeah.
That I call Commanded Hands.
Okay.
We'll talk about that name a little bit later,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
But we did a C Corp because it allowed me to leverage my retirement account to fund the business.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I would do that again, but that's what I did.
Sure.
And so anyway, we did a C Corp, and there's some advantages and disadvantages to that.
Right.
I appreciated you had Wes Shannon on the other day, and he was talking about some of that.
Yeah.
And, I was like, okay, good. Well, maybe I'm smarter than I realized. Right? So that was cool.
Yeah.
But, as far as the preparation, I think the first thing that I would, tell somebody else is make sure you understand your personal finances. Mm-hmm. For me, I decided that when I did this, I was going to make a clean break and really give my full energy and time to starting the new business. I guess somebody might decide to kind of do it on the side and cultivate.
Yep.
That's not what I decided to do.
Okay.
So I decided, hey, I'm going to go into business. I'm going to do that 100%.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that I had to do is make sure that I really understood my own finances. Mm-hmm. What is it going to mean to our family for me to do this? What can we afford to do? How long can we afford to do it? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I would say be very demanding in your analysis of that. Mm-hmm. And part of that too is if you're married, you need to bring your spouse into that conversation and make sure that your spouse is on board. I don't know about most people listening, but certainly to me, my marriage is more important than my business life.
Sure.
And I wouldn't have done this without my wife's full support and encouragement. Either.
Yeah, if you want to live long, I think that's wise. Right? If you don't care about living, just do what you want.
And if you think starting a business is expensive, try a divorce. Those are expensive too.
True story.
So.
Marriage is grand, divorce is $100,000.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so, a lot of reflection on your personal, getting that set up, spelled out. Hey, this is what I need to make, and things like that. Right.
Yeah.
Any other preparation that you had went through? I mean, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, that was a big part of it for me. There are some things I didn't do that I would do.
Perfect. Let's dive into that, right?
So one thing that I think I would really encourage somebody to do is get a team of advisors around you.
Yeah.
If you don't know some small business owners, meet some and get to start to understand how they look at the world and think about the world. Because the biggest challenges you're going to have are probably not the ones you expect. If you had to ask me today, what's the biggest challenge I have?
Mike, what's the biggest challenge you have?
I think it's building a team.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest challenge. Everything else flows out of the team you got around you, right? Sure. And you plug people in and you evaluate them and you think they're going to be able to do a thing, and they're not.
Right.
And you find that out 60 days into working with them, or 90 days, or later. And I'm not just talking about employees. I'm talking about, like, I hired an accounting firm to do my books, and a year in, I realized they weren't doing what I needed done. They didn't understand how I had things organized, and they weren't. It just was a mess.
Yeah.
And so it cost me time and money to find somebody else, and and so that's the biggest challenge I have. Is having that team. Yeah. And so I would say, build the team before.
Okay.
Get some people who know what it takes to do some of this, that you can bounce some of this off of.
Right.
Because if you go the route I went, which I'm very glad I went that route, the franchise route.
Yeah.
If you go that route, a lot of the people you're talking to are trying to sell you a franchise. And they have a vested interest in selling you the franchise, and they love all your ideas and plans. And they will be very affirming.
Yeah.
And that's good. You need that. You need that encouragement. But you need some people that don't have that.
Don't have skin in the game if you say yes or not. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree.
Even better if they're people who like you and care about you and care about your family. And, so I would say assemble a team of advisors that you trust.
Yeah.
I have done that. And actually, I consulted you a little bit, right? I'm starting to consider you as part of my team, right? So
I appreciate that.
You're kind of on the edge, but,
that's all right.
But you're out there, right? So I made a pretty major decision not too long ago.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I had 3 men that I really trust, and they're friends. One of them is a former business owner and a CEO today.
Okay.
One of them was a pastor at church, and one of them was just a really good friend.
Nice.
And I called those guys together and said, hey, here's what I'm looking at.
Yep.
And it was so valuable to me to get their input and feedback. And I talked to you.
Yeah.
And your input and feedback was valuable too.
Yeah.
And
so for the listeners, what's this decision, right?
Yeah. So I had an opportunity to kind of basically double the size of my business, right?
Yeah.
And the way I would have done it would have been to acquire a franchise in another location,
right,
that the owner was kind of at a point where he was ready to kind of say, hey, I'm done with this.
Sure.
And so he was going to make that very attractive from the standpoint of money that I would have to come up with, almost nothing, which if it's too good to be true, it might be, right? So what I had to try to do, and this is where you were very helpful, was understand what questions do I need to ask and what do I need to know about. Yeah. And I asked, right from our conversation, I went and talked to him about the liabilities that I'd be assuming and what it would mean, and really decided that basically the decision I finally made was that at that point, I wouldn't be running a larger version of the business I have. I'd be running 2 businesses.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't equipped to do that.
Yeah.
And so then it would have, hobbled me. It wouldn't have, maybe I would have worked through it, but I kind of remember there was an old football coach who said, when you throw the football, 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad. So I was kind of looking at this. There's a lot of things that can happen. One of them is really good, but most of them are bad. And so I just kind of said, no, I think I'll pass on that. But, so I would say get that group of advisors around you. Get people who know you and can kind of help you assess whether or not you're up for this. And then can help you think through your business plan.
Yeah, definitely.
Help you improve
wisdom.
that. Yeah, I'd say that'd be the second thing. And I didn't really do that.
Yeah.
I am a person maybe I've been humbled a bit by the last couple of years, but I'm a person who had a great deal of confidence in my own counsel going into this. And I think there's room for that, but you probably need
a man is right in his own mind.
Right. Yeah. You need a little, I would suggest that. And then probably the third thing, this is a real practical kind of thing. And I did do this. Make sure your health is in order. You're going to change insurance. You're going to do some things like that. Probably. You're probably not going to get to keep that when you go. So, before you leave that, make sure all the kids have been to the doctors. Make sure you do all that stuff. Yeah. Because the plan you go to may not be as generous as what you're enjoying right now.
Right, sure.
And if you can kind of cross that off and make sure plus, frankly, I mean, this didn't happen to me. I was fine. But if you found out that you had something that you needed to address, that would probably change your decision, right? You might need to stay where you are and deal with that. So, it's a little thing. Also, too, I would say, if you got some bad kind of personal habits, like you don't get enough sleep at night, you don't maybe you need to exercise a little more, maybe you need to eat better. What you're about to undertake is going to take a great deal of energy. It's going to be as high stress as probably anything you've done. Get yourself in shape. Yeah. Get yourself prepared for that. I think I have a pretty decent reserve and resiliency, kind of my makeup. Yeah. But I certainly am trying to improve some of those things now, and I wish I had done a little bit more up front.
Yeah, that's and obviously, I think one thing that came out of COVID was people are focused a little bit more on their health, right? Their immune system and things like that. And it's great advice, really for anybody. But I do like how you've connected to being an entrepreneur, because I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart. A lot of people look at a small business owner, or an entrepreneur, and they see that iceberg that's on top of the water, and they don't see everything else underneath, right? And I think your health and eating right and sleep and all those things, it'll help anybody in any situation. But it takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of go power to keep moving forward, because it's a tough road.
It does, and it takes a lot of kind of looking at the sunny side of things, and it's hard to do that if you don't feel well. Yeah. So. Yep. Yeah.
True story. I always say you got to look at the silver lining in every situation. You got to, because if not, man, you get into the rut and look at the negative and this and that, and then what happens there is. There's an old story that I've heard, and this guy selling hot dogs in New York. Okay, he had his own little stand out on the street, and someone told him, "It's like, man, the economy's horrible. It's horrible. You need to start cutting back on some things." And so he's like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, economy is so bad. You need to cut back." And so he started cutting back some condiments, and he noticed. He's like, "Man, no kidding. I'm not selling as many hot dogs anymore." And he's like, "I know the economy is terrible. You need to cut back even more." So he cut back some more condiments. Right. And sure enough, he's like, "Man, I'm not selling any hot dogs at all. The economy's horrible." Right. And it's just, sometimes it's a matter of perspective and finding that silver lining and stuff. So, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's kind of a fourth thing as we've been talking. I would say, begin with the end in mind. Kind of know where you want to be. Now, I will tell you, I began with the end in mind, and the end has changed, right? It's changed a few times. Yep. But I think you kind of want to know why you're doing this, right? What's your picture? What's your vision that drives you? Because, when you're down and you're going to get down, you're going to need a reminder of what it is that you're striving for. Why are you doing this? Right. And however you want to say that, have that end in mind. Yep. And it's fine if the end changes. I think that's okay, as long as whatever the new end is energizes you and motivates you. So,
love it. Start with the end in mind. I think I always say the why will carry you through the how. Right.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Probably right.
Let's talk about the facing challenges. right?
Yeah.
And surely you had some challenges coming into this, and every entrepreneur will face some challenges. So
so there's lots of different kinds of challenges.
Yeah.
I guess the biggest challenge I've faced,
yeah,
and this is where, hey, that money thing, how much do you have in reserve? How much are you going to, this is really important.
yeah,
Because frankly, if I hadn't had enough in reserve, I wouldn't have survived this challenge.
yeah,
I got some advice, and it seemed like good advice at the time, and I took it. And the advice was to hire a salesperson.
okay,
And that probably was good advice. I don't know that was bad advice.
yeah,
I just didn't hire the right salesperson. And then I compounded the error in that when I hired the salesperson, I treated them like I would want to be treated as a salesperson, which is, hey, tell me what you want done and then leave me alone and I'll go do it. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Which is kind of what I did. I thought I was hiring myself, and I wasn't hiring me. I was hiring somebody else.
sure,
And I will say this, I don't know if he'll ever hear this or not. He is a great person.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, but I didn't really set him up for success,
Gotcha.
if I'm honest.
yeah, sure,
And so I compounded the error. I'm not sure he's the right guy anyway, but if he were the right guy, I didn't probably give him the best circumstance for that to come out.
Yeah.
But anyway, he literally sold nothing.
okay,
And we were probably 60 days into this experiment when I realized he not only hadn't sold anything, he wasn't going to sell anything.
yeah,
And then it took me another 30 days to kind of sort out what to do and, basically.
yeah. So what systems or what things have you now implemented?
Well,
That have come out of that, right? Because every challenge.
So the problem is if you have any success at all, there's too many jobs to do for me to do them all. And our business model requires a fairly involved owner.
Okay.
This isn't a business by design that you're going to be kind of above the fray unless you can grow it really large, right? So to at least get it up and running and grow to a point, you're going to be involved.
Yeah.
So the question then is, what hat do you want to wear, right? At first you're wearing lots of hats, but you sell a few things. Now you got to get stuff delivered.
Right.
Well, the natural hat for me to wear in the business, the last one I ought to take off is the sales hat.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
For me.
Yeah.
That might not be true for other people, but for me, that's the one I should have held on to.
Okay.
And so what I should have been trying to figure out is how do I bring in a project manager? How do I bring in somebody like that?
Yeah.
And there was a temptation to bring in a salesperson because they're commission.
Right.
They don't sell something, I don't have to pay them.
Right.
So but I did pay him to get him started, get him going, and figured he would, So the big thing I learned was, hey, the most enjoyable thing about running this whole thing is me being in front of a customer selling.
Yeah.
So that is the last thing I want to give up.
Yeah.
So back to the thing, I got to build a team around me that can start to take these things off the plate as it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And I've got a project manager now who is great, and he's getting better. He's a retired police officer, and he's a friend of mine. I've known him literally for a long time.
Yeah.
44 years, I guess I've known him.
Okay.
It was 1979, 45 years. Wow.
Nice.
Almost 45 years.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Hire your weaknesses. Right?
Exactly.
You were a salesman prior.
Right.
I think you had said B+. I would imagine you're probably better than that. You're a pretty humble guy. But hiring your weaknesses. Right. And I would typically agree with the position you took on taking the hat off, the salesman hat last, because the marketing and the salesman hat is what's going to feed the machine, right? And I think that no one cares for the machine as much as you do, right? So you're going to go a little bit longer, a little bit harder, a little bit further in order to get that sale, and then you have your finger on the pulse a little bit more in sales. But if you're not a salesperson and you're owning a business, then you need to hire your weaknesses.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, and that's, it wasn't hard for me to learn and understand the sales process, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of aspects to the running a business that are harder for me to learn and understand.
Yeah.
And so I can be maybe not, I heard you talking with, I think it was Micah Goodson the other day about unconsciously competent.
Yep, unconsciously competent.
I'm not quite unconsciously competent selling kitchens and baths, but I'm pretty close, right?
Yeah,
because I know, like, even when I'm in an interaction, in a sales interaction, I know how to answer a question. I don't have to sit here and think through what's happening here, right? I mean, it's just, I know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's second nature to me almost.
Right.
So,
Yep. Yeah. Well, perfect. Let's talk about maybe some pitfalls to avoid, right? I know you already mentioned one with the salesman, jumping out there and not really maybe monitoring or whatever, but, what are some other pitfalls that you can think of? All right, if I were to go back to Mike 3 years ago, I would say, hey, don't do this, right?
Yeah, that is a big question. There's so many things, but I guess a big one is don't feel like you have to know all the answers. And you said I was a humble guy. I don't think I know all the answers, really. But this goes back to that building a team around you. Get some expertise, get some people who've walked this path, and don't feel like I got to go dig up the answer. I got to go find it myself. I got to, compress that time cycle. get some good advice.
Yeah.
And understand. And advice is free, right? People give it freely, and
you can go on Facebook and everybody.
Right. So try to get advice from people who care about you and are invested in your success.
So you're, and I want to talk about this a little bit more because you brought up a really good point on having almost like a counsel, someone you can go to, right? So you had a pastor, you have a friend that's not in the business, and then there was a third.
Yeah. He's also a friend, but he's a CEO, and a former business owner.
Yeah,
a successful business owner. Yeah.
I like that. I like that combination. Right.
Yeah.
I think that combination is really good for someone to model after. Right. And someone may not have a pastor friend or someone like that that's spiritual, but everybody knows someone that is, right. And so to have that someone looking after you and in that realm, and then having a friend that's and then someone that's maybe been down the road in business owner and stuff, having those three different levels, I think is super, man, that's a good combo.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, like when we had this meeting, my good friend, his name's Michael, he is a manager in a decent sized business. They build water towers, right? Okay. So he's got some business acumen and some understanding.
Yeah, for sure.
My friend Dan, who's the CEO of another business that's in the construction, commercial construction, big projects.
Okay.
He understands all the business stuff. And the pastor, Scott, says, well, look, I can't really speak to the business side of this. Yeah. But he asked me probably the most important question anybody asked me. He said, when I look at you, I don't see a guy with a lot of time that he's trying to figure out how to spend. Right. He said, is this gonna improve your marriage? Is this gonna help you with your walk with the Lord? Is this gonna be, that? Yeah. And that's really about the only thing he said. But honestly, that's why I had him there. Yeah. Right. And so it was really helpful.
I love that. That's great. Okay. So sustaining passion and vision, right? I know some small business owners get out there and they're just grinding it out day in and day out, right? How can they sustain their passion, their vision?
Yeah.
Other than listening to the Bizlife podcast.
Well, I guess, do listen to the Bizlife podcast. Listen to it twice, actually. No. I would say, I said begin with the end in mind. Remember why you're doing these things. So let's talk a little bit about the why. Why did I pick the business I picked? Could have picked lots of things. There's franchises that do all kinds of stuff. And I looked at several different ones, right? Mm-hmm. And it came down to a few things. First of all, I was very impressed with the management of kitchen tune-up.
Okay.
And it's kind of there's some overlap in the management of kitchen tune-up and bath tune-up. I thought kitchen tune-up made sense to me for a lot of reasons.
Did you do kitchen first and then added bath, or did you do both at the same time?
I did them both at the same time, but we did open the bath later. We opened the kitchen first, got that going, and then we added the bath. Yeah. And so on the kitchen side of the business, that's a longer established franchise. It's been around about 40 years.
Okay.
And there's several hundred locations around the country. Yeah. They have an exceptional leader. Her name is Heidi Morrissey. And I was super impressed when they were presenting their business and talking about it. Everybody was organized. They were crisp. They knew what they were doing. And I thought, okay, well, this is all about buying a system. And if they're organized and they know what they're doing here, then that should translate, across the board. Right. I just felt like from the leadership on down. And I think that's been largely true.
Good.
I don't know that I've been the best adherent to all that organization, but it's there, right? Yeah. And I've been very pleased with that. Yeah, bath tune-up was just kind of like, that's a great compliment to the kitchen business. Mm-hmm. And it just seems to me to make sense that you would do both, right? And that would be a whole picture. Now, as to why this business on a personal level, other than just that, because it could have been lots of things.
Yeah.
I have, part of my background is for a while I worked for a builder. So I felt like I could understand a lot of the technical stuff with building, doing remodeling, that, right? I knew kind of what's behind the walls when you open them up, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I felt like I'd be comfortable in that world, right? So there was that. There was also, growing up, my brother had a cerebral palsy. I might get choked up here.
It's okay.
Moving through space was such a big deal for him. Mm. Being able to get around and having access to stuff. That I really understand that improving a space improves people's lives. Mm. When you put things down where somebody can reach them, or when you make a door wide enough that a wheelchair can roll through it, right?
Yeah.
And you think about those things. So I see spaces maybe a little differently than a lot of people.
Wow.
And I wanted to be in a business where one of the things that drew me to the business was I thought I could actually not just make things prettier, which, by the way, is really important.
Yeah.
Aesthetic beauty that's a big deal. And to have a space that you admire and that you like being in and all of that, that's, there's something of the divine in that. So that in and of itself is important, but then to make it functional, to make it work and make it, especially for people who are trying to age in place and trying to enjoy, where they've been for 20, 30, 40 years on into the, to the last minute that they can stay.
Yeah.
If I could be a part of that, that's pretty cool. So what keeps you going?
Yeah.
It's knowing that you heated Alice's floor and now she can go in there and she doesn't have to worry about tripping on the throw rugs. And knowing that makes a quantifiable difference to her. She's in her 80s.
Yeah.
Right? It's seeing somebody realize that, hey, this space is uplifted because the colors are brighter and there's more light in here and it's more open. And I just love being in this space now. And before I just kind of dreaded it.
Yeah.
Right. That's what keeps me going.
Yeah. Making a real difference.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference quite literally where people live. And that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
I mean, that's pretty cool. So,
that's neat.
And that's part of the benefit of being involved in the sale.
Yeah.
Right. I see that. If you get too removed from that, you kind of start to miss it. I mean, my guys who are installing and that, like I was talking with one of our guys who does a lot of the tile work and some of that stuff. And I realized he's kind of disconnected from the customer's experience.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. He's got a job to do.
Right. He does. And we do more work after he's done. So he doesn't quite see the full thing. Yeah. So I need to kind of start thinking about ways to bring that back around and make sure that they understand, what their contribution's been to the whole.
Right.
So,
No, that would be very powerful. I think, and continue to solidify your team and build up your team. Very neat, man. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Man, so let's do this. First of all, thank you so much for watching the Bizlife podcast. We do ask, if you can, any way possible, hit the click, the bell for notification, I think it is. Share it out. We really appreciate that. We're sort of closer to the end of the podcast. Okay.
Time has flown by.
I know, right? I would like to dive a little bit more into you and,
Sure.
Something personal that's, that just drives you, or something, that we could share with the listeners,
Yeah. Back to your why. Why do you do things? Why do you?
Yeah.
I said that we have a parent company. It's called Commanded Hands. And I've talked about my pastor being an advisor now.
Yeah.
Probably maybe he should have been an advisor 2 years ago, but he is now, right? We'll take it when we can get it.
That's right.
We got that name. My wife and I came up with that name. We kind of were thinking about, what do we call this thing? And I was thinking about why we want to do this. And one thing we haven't talked about too much, but one of the things I think has been devalued in our culture and in our day is people who work with their hands, people who make a living by basically making the world that we're in work, by building it, keeping it working, the electricians, the plumbers, the tradesmen, those men and women, right? And I just so appreciate what they do. A lot of folks in my family tree are of that ilk, right? And I feel like at a time, not that long ago, that was an aspiration for a lot of people, was to have a trade and to go out and apply that trade. And we've kind of lost that vision for some reason. Everybody's got to go to college and got to go do. And the more time I spend around people who work with their hands, the more I just love them. They're just so practical, right? I mean, things either work or they don't. And you gotta make it work. And they get to the end of the day and they know what they did or didn't do, right? And they, it's very quantifiable. So I said all that to say, if you go to in the New Testament, there's a letter that Paul wrote to the Thessalonians. It's called 1 Thessalonians. Yeah. And in the 4th chapter, about the 10th verse, he's giving some instructions to the folks there, and he says, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, make it your ambition to lead quiet lives and to work with your hands so that you can provide for yourself and not be in need, and you can be a benefit to your community, basically a witness to others that you're, a right kind of person. And that will speak volumes to those around you. So we took that, the New American Standard version, that's the version that we got that from. It uses the word commanded, as we've commanded you, right? And so we said, okay, we want to have a place where people can come do that, where they can actually come and ply their trade and do the work with their hands and provide for their families in a way that they're not in need, and that then their families benefit and the community around them benefits. And that's one of the things that motivates us for sure. So, so that's where the name comes from, and we try to live up to that.
Yeah,
so.
I love that. It's very inspiring, and man, I love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, well, thanks
cool.
for asking. It's almost Easter, right? I mean, tomorrow's Good Friday. I think we need to say, I don't know who's hearing this, but I am convinced from the top of my head to the bottom of my shoes that whoever you are, wherever you are, Jesus loves you. And man, he is there. And, I think we live in a world that's kind of sneers at that and is kind of cynical about that. But I challenge you, if you don't know him, you just heard about him, you don't know what to think, I mean, go find out. he will redeem your life.
I love it.
There you go.
Absolutely love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So kitchen tune-up, bath tune-up. Quick 30-second commercial. What do you do? How do they get a hold of you?
Oh, great.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So the easiest way to get a hold of us probably is to go to either bathtuneup.com, which is just like it sounds, except there's a hyphen between tune and up.
Okay.
So bathtuneup.com. It'll ask you who you are, what your zip code is, and if I can help you, bang, you'll get right there.
Yeah.
Same thing with kitchentuneup.com, no hyphen.
Okay.
Right? Okay. You're also, this is dangerous. You're also welcome to call me on my direct dial.
Okay.
817-845-2852. I would love to visit with you.
Yeah.
We do kitchen and bath remodels, right? And we do updates and remodels, I guess I should say. So we do everything in the kitchen from kind of the organizational slide out trays. If you just want to make it easier to live in your kitchen, you like how it looks, we can do little things like that to completely refacing your cabinets and making them look brand new, to tearing everything out and starting all over and giving you a nice brand new kitchen from the ground up. Nice. Same kind of thing in the bath. We do a lot of tub to shower conversions, right? A lot of people want that shower walk-in instead of that tub.
Yeah.
We do a lot of making showers bigger because they're too small and working with the space. We do a lot of updates where people just are tired of the way it looks and they want to update all that.
My wife wants one of those claw foot tubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all do that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Cool.
If you think you want it in the bathroom, we can do it. I mean, heated floor, crazy TVs that can stand up to the shower steam and all that. I mean, whatever. I mean, just literally, if you can think of it,
I'd never leave the shower.
I suggested to somebody as a joke the other day, hey, you probably need a coffee maker in here, right? It's the first place you go. And they're like, hey, that's a good idea. I think they might do it.
Right? There you go.
So whatever, cool. Right? So,
well, Mike, thank you so much for being on the show.
Sure.
Man, it's been inspiring, inspirational, and very interesting. So it's amazing.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I really, I don't know if anybody's listening is obviously you're aware of the show or you wouldn't be listening. Yeah. But man, go back and listen to these back episodes.
Appreciate that.
Donnie's doing a great job of getting people here that have something to say that's worth hearing, and it's an education in and of itself. So thanks for doing it, Donnie.
Thank you. All right, so make sure you like, subscribe, and send out. Man, appreciate y'all. Y'all have a great day. We'll see you next time on The Biz Life.